What's good, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Today is going to be part one of an 8-part series of an overview of every single NBA team before the regular season begins. We're going to go by division. So right now we're going to have the Atlantic division. I'm basically just doing a random team generator. Whatever team I land on, I'm going to be doing the division of that team. And today, it was the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I could have ended up just doing one video per team, but I had a great feeling that if I ended up trying to do that, I would not be able to finish it before the season starts. So I feel like doing 4 teams a video, 1 division of video is something I could definitely follow up on, and 8 videos is not that hard to make when it comes to, I don't even know when the NBA season starts, like 30 days, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, go into the description and submit your video ideas, and let's get right into it with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I kind of like starting with this 76ers team because it feels like they have a lot going on right now. Not only, obviously, a couple months ago, they ended up signing Paul George to the 4-year maximum, but Joel Embiid also signed that 3-year maximum extension with them just a couple days ago. Whether you like or hate Joel Embiid and his game, you can't deny that him continually sticking to this Philadelphia 76ers process is not only just admirable, but he also just believes that this team, I don't know, but he did sign that extension. He trusts in what Paul George is going to bring them. He trusts the development of Tyrese Maxey. And for that, I respect Joel Embiid. Now, is his game the most fun to watch? I'm going to be honest, no, it's not. I think he's one of the most talented big men that this league has ever seen. With all due respect to Tim Duncan, by the way, because I think he could definitely be brought up in these conversations when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. But Joel Embiid being able to face up on the top of the key, take 1-2 dribbles, do a double move, and get to his spot every single time is just not something we've seen from any big man in this league. Him being able to stretch his range out to the three-point line, but like I said before, taking the guy off the dribble, 1 dribble, 2 dribble, to that free throw line, being able to rise up, it's very impressive. Tim Duncan, obviously, if I'm doing a ranking, yes, he's going to be above Joel Embiid in all-time centers or in talent itself, just because of what he brings on the defensive side of the ball. What Joel Embiid's able to do on the offensive side, getting to his spot, getting to the free throw line, being efficient as well, you have to respect that. So he's one of the greatest offensive big men that this league has ever seen, and he also's loyal to the city of Philadelphia. Last year, Embiid suffered with a lot of injuries, and that obviously ended up making this team the 7th seed. They had to beat the Miami Heat, like we're seeing right here in the play-in tournament, to go ahead and face the New York Knicks. And then in that series, the Knicks 1-6, they overtook the Philadelphia 76ers Wells Fargo Arena, and it was just clear that they were overall the better team, especially with Joel Embiid having injury concerns still going into the playoffs. Joel Embiid was not 100%. Tyrese Maxey broke out for sure, having a near 50-point game, unless he did drop 50 in game 5 against the New York Knicks, where he hit the game tying shot to send that game to overtime, where they eventually won. And I think Tyrese Maxey, his ability to maybe become more of a point guard, maybe become more of a facilitator with Paul George on that team as well, can really get this team to potentially be a finals contender. Now, would I call them a finals contender right now? I'm not so sure because there's obviously like 4 or maybe 3 teams I would 100% take over this Philadelphia 76ers team when we're just looking out straight up 100%. Like the Knicks, I could see the 76ers end up becoming better than the Knicks by the end of the season, at least having a better record. Same thing with the Bucks, but the Celtics are going to be better than the 76ers. I think also the Timberwolves will also be better than 76ers and the Thunder. That's 3 teams right there. But other than that, if this Philadelphia 76ers team can really show that they're able to close out games, that Paul George and Joel Embiid are capable of going throughout the season without any too big of injuries, I think this team actually has a shot at trying to win the NBA Finals this year. Next up, we got the New York Knicks, one of my favorite teams in the league, not only because I'm from New York, but also because this team's going to be very exciting next year. Them being able to make it to the 2 seed, which is highest seed since what, Patrick Ewing? I'm not sure. Maybe, did they get the 2 seed with Carmelo? I mean, there's a couple good teams during that era, like the Raptors and the Pacers. Obviously, the Heat, or I guess the Bulls and the Heat probably had the 1 and 2 seeds. So I don't think they ever touched the 2 seed with LaMelo. So this probably was the highest seed they ever got since Patrick Ewing was on the Knicks. If I didn't already mention in these videos, I'm not going to go too deep into statistics. I'm going to look at some of the standings, some of the game results, but I'm not going to look at a team's clutch time, 3-point percentage, or something as crazy as that. Just look at these teams overall, how they did this season, and what they're looking to do going into next season. And the Knicks, adding Mikal Bridges, I think that this team's going to be slightly better, but they're not as good as the Celtics as of yet. That big man position is a huge question mark for me. Isaiah Hartenstein obviously leaving to the Thunder with that big contract. You do have Mitchell Robinson, but he has not been healthy in the last 3 years, or at least not been fully healthy in the last 3 years. Precious Achiuwa is just not a full-time center. He doesn't have the height. He really does not have the offensive or defensive skills to become a full-time center. Like, he's not guarding the Joel Embiids of the world. He's not guarding the Jokic's. He's probably not guarding the Bams, not guarding the Wembenyamas, not guarding the Sabonises. A guy like Mitchell Robinson is someone I could see doing that. But like I said before, the injury concerns are a real thing. And then you have Jericho Sims there. I think he does have potential as a nice lob threat, a nice pick and roll defender, but he's just not there yet. He's young. He has a lot of developing to do. I like that the Knicks brought him back, but right now, that's just not a guy you can insert right into that big man or into that big man depth because that's what they need right now. They did say Julius Randle was going to be playing some center minutes. I like that a lot because that shows that this team could be looking to play a more small ball lineup going into the season. And that's just not something we've seen Tibbs do basically ever. He's really always rolled with the center at that 5 position. But with Julius Randle potentially playing some center minutes, who knows? Maybe this team can turn into more of a small ball team. We know what Jalen Brunson's going to bring, borderline MVP type play basically for the last 2 seasons. He's just one of the best offensive players we have in this league. Doesn't matter because of his height. We saw obviously a couple years ago, 2017, 2018, Isaiah Thomas, 5'9", was one of the best scorers in this league. And he believed that if he was just a couple inches taller, he could have been an MVP candidate. Now, Jalen Brunson, is he 5'9"? No, but he's not that far away from it. And I think he has a very similar offensive impact from what Isaiah Thomas showed with the Boston Celtics just a couple years ago. And what's different from that Celtics team is that this Knicks team supporting pieces is a lot more developed, a lot more talented than what the Celtics had a couple years ago with IT, Avery Bradley, Al Horford was there for a little bit. Those group of guys. We know what OG Anunoby is going to bring for this team. I think if he was healthy during the divisional, or not the divisional round, excuse me, the second round of the playoffs last year, I think that team makes it to the conference finals. Josh Hart, probably the best role player in the NBA right now. It used to be Derek White, but he's kind of graduated from the role player role because he's one of the league's best 3-and-D players, one of the league's best perimeter defenders, and also one of the league's very solid and competent three-point shooters. Josh Hart, one of the best fast break players we have in this league. Obviously, an insane rebounder for being 6'4", and overall, he just fits perfectly what this Knicks team is trying to build right now. I already talked about OG Anunoby, one of the best defenders we have in this league. Then Dante DiVincenzo adding one of the best three-point shooters we've seen in this league. I mean, he's just been elite from outside the range ever since he's joined the New York Knicks. Can't remember the exact stat, but did he break the New York Knicks all-time in-season three-point makes record? I'm not exactly sure, but obviously he broke some Knicks record for three-point. I don't know if it was percentage-wise. I don't know if it was makes-wise, but I do know is that he could stretch the floor like the best of them in the league. And then obviously adding Mikal Bridges, who kind of brings you similar stuff to what OG Anunoby brings you. I think he's definitely more of a lengthy defender instead of OG Anunoby being able to guard big man. Bridges can guard 1 through 3. He probably can't bang it down low with Joel Embiid because he just isn't big. He's not stocky. He's long, but unlike OG Anunoby, he's not a stocky guy that can bang down low with the big guys. But what he can bring is that 3-and-D elite role player potential. That's what he did with the Suns a couple years ago when he got them to the NBA Finals by being a near defensive player of the year. And I think he can do something very similar to the Knicks this year, where he does not have to average 20 points per game, can huddle around that 15, 16 points per game, but also go back to that elite defender we know he once was just a couple seasons ago. And then going back on Julius Randle, I think he has all the potential of the world to get that new contract extension. But I don't think he has to do it by scoring 23, 24 points per game. This Knicks team is in a new era. They're not in an era where they have to give the ball to Julius Randle and say, go get us a bucket. We need you to go get us a bucket because if you don't, this team is nothing without you. They have Jalen Brunson now. And if Julius Randle can play some small ball center, can be a lot better on the defensive side of the ball, I think that this Knicks team's ceiling rises that much higher, where they go from a second round to third round exit team to potential NBA Finals contenders. And yes, like I said, if Julius Randle combines to that defensive side of the ball, if he can bring high effort, high energy, I think that this Knicks team can compete for the NBA Finals next year. Next up, let's talk about this Toronto Raptors team. And in my personal opinion, I think they are heading in one of the best directions we have for a young team in the NBA currently. Starting off, let's just talk about their guy, their main building piece, the guy that they're building around in Scotty Barnes. He was the rookie of the year in his first year. I'm not going to say he fell off in his second year, but he was not as efficient. He didn't put up the same counting numbers. But last year, he was an all-star. He was an all-defensive caliber type player. I know he didn't get it, but he improved on the defensive side of the ball. He was a better shooter. And overall, his efficiency, his scoring, his counting numbers all went up. I love the trade that they were able to manage at the deadline, trading Precious Achua and OG Anunoby to the Knicks for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. I thought you got two guys that have very high offensive potential. Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett are both guys I think can make a most improved jump going into next year and would just further help the surrounding pieces that Scotty Barnes is able to bring. I think that center position is a bit of a question mark right now because it's tough to keep extending Jakob Poeltl because the ceiling with him is just so much high where you can't really win a championship with him at your big man. And maybe if they build a very competent team around that center position, but I don't think Jakob Poeltl deserves to get the title as that. And I think overall, it might be time to look for a new big man, maybe a slightly cheaper big man, maybe a guy that can actually stretch the floor to help Scotty Barnes, to help OG, or not OG Anunoby, excuse me, to help RJ Barrett, to help Emmanuel Quickly, because this team has very high potential going into next year. I'm a bit confused why they did end up taking Jacoby Walter with that, what was it, 19th overall pick in the 2024 draft. It's kind of redundant at that shooting guard position. You have Grady Dick, obviously, the 14th pick or the 13th pick in the 2023 draft with the very interesting looking suit. But then the years, or not going to say years, I think the year before maybe, they ended up getting Ochai Agbaji. They didn't end up drafting him, but he was drafted in that 2022 class. And then he made his way over to the Toronto Raptors. And he also plays the similar shooting guard guy that can just stretch the floor with you, similar to what Grady Dick and kind of similar to what they're looking to get out of Jacoby Walter. Overall, I think Emmanuel Quickly will have a very big season. Is that Ozempic in the yeah, I think Emmanuel Quickly will have a very big season as a true point guard. When he was with the Knicks, he was not a true point guard. You had Brunson, he was just off the bench to get you some buckets. But now, as a true ball handler, I think we could see 6+ potential assists from Emmanuel Quickly going into next year. RJ Barrett, in my opinion, I think it's probably time for that all-star jump. I said it in previous videos, but I truly believe that RJ Barrett can average 24 or at least 23 plus points next year, give you elite three-point shooting, and give you elite defense as well. Obviously, Scotty Barnes is continuing to be an all-star in this league. I want to continue to see that defense develop, him being able to guard positions 1 through 5. That's a crazy block right there. And then Jakob Poeltl, will we move him at the deadline? Will we potentially draft someone in the 2025 class to be our future center? Maybe that's Kamal Malak. Maybe that's Rocco Zikarsky. I don't know. But I think this team has a great direction. I would not be surprised if next year this team made the play-in tournament. It's about to do the Brooklyn Nets part of this video, and I just want to point out that their current season highlights, it's not really here. You got KD, you got, I guess, Lakers versus Nets, but those last two videos were season highlights of the Raptors, the Knicks, and the 76ers. I'm getting game highlights, I'm getting highlights from 5 years ago, but I'm not getting a 2024 season highlight reel. I'm gonna go look for it though. Alright, I'm settling for a Knicks versus Nets highlight reel. It's the best I found, but let's go talk about this Brooklyn Nets team. Right away, their biggest departure, Mikal Bridges. We talked about him a little bit when he was with the Knicks. Let's focus on the other guys that this Nets team has. Starting off with Nick Claxton getting that contract extension at the end of last year, or right before the draft of this year. Overall, in my opinion, I think the Nets got a very, very team-friendly deal done with Nick Claxton. I thought Claxton probably deserved upwards of $30 million. He didn't get as much as that, but I think overall, his defensive impact, his pick and roll impact, his lob dart impact, and I think what can potentially develop into his impact with the ball in his hands as a creator at that center position kind of deserves him to get more than $30 million. Annually, of course. I expect a big sort of breakout season from Nick Claxton this year, and I think just overall, I think that the Nets got a steal with him, obviously late in the first round a couple years ago, and what he's developed into being one of the best centers we have in the league. Next up, let's talk about Cam Thomas. He has been a very interesting player to follow the first couple years of his career. Just last year, he was dropped in 3 straight 40-point games with all those players hurt for them. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, whoever was out, it was Cam Thomas time, and he was just making it look easy. He went into next year with sort of high expectations because he was going to be viewed as that team's overall second scoring option with Mikal Bridges there, and that team was looking to make a play-in push. Now, obviously, they didn't. Cam Thomas dealt with some injuries, but one thing that you can't deny is that this guy has buckets written all over him. We know that Cam Thomas is going to give you at least 20 points per game, and I think next year with the ball going to be in his hands basically every single possession in the game, he can maybe look at 24, 25, maybe even 26 plus points per game going into next year. Now, even though Cam Thomas is this team's most prolific scorer, I don't think that their overall focus should be on him. I think not only should it be on Nick Claxton, but there are two young guys, two rookies from that 2023 class that I also want to look at this Brooklyn Nets team development. Because we can all agree that this Nets team has no chance on making the play-in tournament, no chance on making the playoffs, I'd love them to go ahead and get guys like Dariq Whitehead and Noah Clowney some ample minutes going into next year. Dariq Whitehead is a guy that's able to stretch the floor from you. He was great at his limited time at Duke in being able to hit that three-point shot. And Noah Clowney being a rim running power forward who's able to block shots. He's a great defender, able to be a lob threat potentially next to Nick Claxton, and also has the slight ability to stretch the floor and shoot threes as well. When you look at building a team like the Brooklyn Nets, obviously you do not have your superstar yet. Cam Thomas, he's not versatile enough to be the number one on a championship level team. But what you can do is look to develop role players around your potential superstar. Now, because that the Nets don't have that potential superstar yet, it's time to start grooming guys like Dariq Whitehead to be an elite three-point shooter and potentially be a starting shooting guard on a potential team. It's time to look at developing guys like Noah Clowney to, like I said before, being a nice rim runner, being able to defend the pick and rolls, being able to be a lob threat as well. Those are the role players you'd like to develop, but to potentially be the role players of a championship team, or at least be trade targets for other teams. I could talk about Dorian Finney-Smith. I think there's a great chance he gets traded at near the deadline next year because he's just a solid role player that a championship team would love to acquire. Same thing with Cam Johnson, even though his contract's a little bit bigger, so it will be harder. But I think overall, the main pieces that this Nets team is going to be focusing on next year is going to be obviously their best player, in my opinion, Nick Claxton, Dariq Whitehead, his development, Noah Clowney, his development, maybe even a guy like Jalen Wilson in his development. We'll see how that ends up. And then I guess Cam Thomas as well. I know you got Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, but I think right now you should view them as more trade targets than guys you actually want to see develop. I guess I should talk a little bit about Daron Sharp as well. I thought he would have been a great replacement for Nick Claxton if the deal fell through because I even think that Nick Claxton could have asked for a bit more money. So if he did that and the Nets didn't want to give him to that, I think that Daron Sharp could have been a great replacement. I think as a backup center for this Nets team, he's been doing a great job, and I continue to think that he can be a starter somewhere else in the league. Overall, the main goal for the Nets next season is to capture the flag. Now, finally, the last but certainly not least, we have the 2024 World Champions, the Boston Celtics. I mean, what can you really say about this team? It's the most perfectly built team we have in the NBA right now. It has the most, I'd say, stars. I could say. Is Derek White a star? Is Drew Holiday a star? Is Porzingis a star? Maybe, maybe not. Obviously, you got superstars like Jalen Brunson, or not Jalen Brunson, Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. But I think overall they have the most talent, at least in that starting five that we have in the NBA right now. And what helps them as well is that they work very well together. The consensus just a couple years ago is that Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown cannot coexist on the court at the same time. Their play styles were too similar. What has happened since then? Jalen Brown's became an elite defender, and Jason Tatum's been able to move without the ball. Obviously, he's still more of a primarily on-ball type of player, and I think overall Jalen Brown's developed outside of his game a little bit more, but they both grew, they both adapted to the new style of the NBA, and they both molded around each other in a way that this team was able to win a championship. I talked about Derek White being the former best role player we have in the NBA. I think I kind of outgrew that because of how good of an NBA player he is right now. I've also talked about Drew Holiday. I think he's the best perimeter that we have in defender we have in the NBA right now. You have guys like Herb Jones, guys like Jaden McDaniels, a bit more switchability type players where they can guard 1 through 4. When it comes to strictly, I'm going on your team's best guard and I'm not letting him score more than 12 points in a game, I'm going to take Drew Holiday for that. I think he is still an elite level defender and arguably a top 5 in the league right now. I guess the overall biggest question mark that this team has going into next season is going to be that center position. Kristaps Porzingis is going to be out a couple months. He has surgery. So who's going to be able to step up at that center position? Now, the obvious answer would be Al Horford. Only problem is he's nearing 4 years old. He does have the play style where he can continue to play the game that he's playing right now. But you have guys like Neemias Keita off the bench who actually was pretty solid last year. See him in the left side right there. You have guys like Luke Cornett who came in and played a role. In my personal opinion, I think Al Horford will be okay. That's definitely a question that could arise going into next year. What will happen to that center position? Is Porzingis going to be okay in the regular season going into the playoffs? Or is he not? Who knows? But I think overall, they'll be okay. So I guess that's kind of it for this Boston Celtics team. I think they're going to be once again probably the best team we have in the NBA, at least record-wise. But yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, go into the description and submit your video ideas. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to look out for, I guess, a part 2 in the next upcoming days. It's going to be maybe the Central Division, maybe the Southeast Division, maybe the Northwest Division, Pacific Division. What else is there? The Southwest Division. I don't know. It's going to be a random NBA team generator, and I'll see you guys then. Peace.